feelings are to feel, but in a lingering way, as in feel-ling, feel lingering. And also extremes are former streams. Extremes in this sense means stagnant or stale energy.
You see, you're trying to interpret the word. The words, you know, they originate, they have certain original meaning, and then with time, through, you know, whatever circumstances, they alter the meaning, or they become sometimes totally changed. Any extremes, it means that one is draining, whether draining through positive or draining through negative. So stream is a flow, right? So you either find, now we have Shaktipat stream. Shaktipat stream means you get into a natural flow, you flow. Flow without expectations, flow disillusioned, flow realizing what impedes your flow sometimes. So, and what impedes your flow is the external currents. Do not try to interpret life or look into very minute details. Minute details here means that do not try to divide life and complicate it more, because it's already complex. So it's better to, you know, spiritual evolution means from complexity into less and less complex, into then duality, and then from duality into some kind of a wholesomeness. So the process of corruption, devolution happens when we divide the world into this and that, and then we propel this further separation, division, and complexity into multiplication, or I don't know, what is that, multitude, you know, of different things. And then the multitude mesmerizes us, attracts us, propels our ignorance, because if we dive into the multitude and complexity, we just we forget actually who we are. So, and evolution means to return to the wholesome perception of who we are, without associating with minute or separate elements of this reality. So this is the key here. If we go continuously into just looking with a magnifying glass into one aspect, we're missing the rest. So goes for our sciences, I mean, arts. We just look at one aspect. We don't see that everything is interconnected and flows one out of the other and is a wholesome being. So as long as we keep on dividing things, we are missing the main point, existential point of being, existence. Even the understanding of time and space is kind of very much divided in everyone's head. So that's why we don't know what the actual space is and what's the actual time, because we don't know what is consciousness. We only speculate. And as long as we speculate, we cannot understand the wholesome picture or the being. And perhaps as long as we are dwelling on a very limited perspective of our limited minds in our human context, and seeing everything through senses, our reality is the reality of senses rather than the actual reality. So all the words define the man-made reality, the reality of senses and perceptions, but the actual being still remains hidden, occulted, not perceived. So as long as we interpret life through the words are a part of our reality of senses, the man-made reality. So we are confused. We are just going again along with some other wave, external current. If we look at everything through our human senses, again, human senses are very different from animal senses, insect senses, and so on. So the reality that we are trying to understand and perceive is the reality of our human senses. And the intelligence level through which we try to interpret what we perceive through the senses is also limited by our current evolutionary level or status. So whatever we think of being and reality and knowledge is still very limited, as long as we dwell on the realm of thoughts, emotions, senses, and try to see or find the reality through these limited transitory tools within ourselves. Because these tools are just to navigate this limited world. But if we are not connected with the ultimate being, we cannot understand, which is beyond senses, beyond ideologies and limited concepts which were created through the sensual perception, so an interpretation of that. So we are not able to actually grasp the actual essence of existence and what the existence and true reality are. So because of that, we just continuously propel the limited perspective or many perspectives. So that's why we've got so many philosophies, so many spiritual schools, so many religious movements, because everyone just gives their limited interpretation of things without trying to go into wholesome. But how can we go into wholesome? We can't, because as long as we are still supporting these external currents which connect us to the world of senses, we're not capable of. So there's literally an evolutionary limitation here. And as long as that evolutionary limitation persists, there will be distortion and ignorance on the account of actual existence and being. Because as long as we are disconnected within, we feel incomplete. And as long as we feel incomplete, we will either, or this feeling of incompleteness will either push us back to our natural being, to our wholesome content being, which is rare, or it will push us outwards more and more to look for some other transitory aspects to fill us in. And this is again another reason for being addicted to the world or to the matter in general. And if someone says that they've renounced the world because they just dressed up in whatever robes, or they have a certificate, a status, or they dwell in partially in isolation, it does not define one as a renunciate, because one still has illusions, seeds of distortions that, whether physically one is isolated or not, still propel his or her subtle delusion, subtle imbalances, and so on, and does not allow one to see the world beyond the sensory perspectives and concepts and all, which are propelled by sensory perception and then interpretation and collage of imagination and previous ideologies, concepts. So it's all just like a mental exercise, basically. So as long as there is mental exercise, one is not perceiving consciousness as it is, and it is nothing. It's awareness, it's stillness in the body, in the mind, but it's overall awareness. And when that is there, one is able to perceive beyond senses. One becomes, what is spiritual evolution also, another perspective is that once awareness penetrates through these subtle aspects of reality and sees also its transitory being, and realizes that all of these are just representations of multidimensional conscious matter, which vibrates and sort of functions on its own. So creates itself, recreates, changes, and constantly vibrates. But the reality is beyond that. So slowly, evolutionary path begins with understanding your own limitation within the limited, and then going into subtler limitations and detangling or dissolving them. I would say not detangling, but dissolving these subtle seeds of within, and coming to the actual reality, which is nothing, because it's not of the same matter. It's not of a anything that you can put in terms of human understanding of reality or world, or what comprises worldly archetypes, or understanding of living or non-living. Like, for example, humans understand living and non-living. If, okay, something moves on its own, then it's living, and something is static, it's non-living. Although there are some groups which also see that everything is living because everything vibrates, and so it's more a atomic and subatomic perspective, where there is still vibration of atoms and molecules in certain intangible objects. And as I many times say, we have to perceive reality as a reality transmits itself, and it transmits itself through different things. And what is transmitted? The being is transmitted through everything, but then the being is wrapped up into something else. If you look at the man-made reality, let's say our whatever gadgets, tables, it's someone's creation, someone's emotion, someone's charge. But what is this charge? It's on the level of thoughts, emotions. So it's the creative ideas which envelop these objects. So these objects not only emanate the being, but this being is distorted by because certain pieces, let's say, are put together. Like you say, you're a carpenter and you created a table. So at first this table arose in your space of consciousness or mind consciousness in the form of idea. Then you kind of had a certain way or thoughts while you were creating this thing. So all that is a transmission of the creator into the object. So the object will vibrate the not only the ultimate being which is behind everything, but it will also vibrate the consciousness of the creator. So that human who has created or who has touched it. So this is all, it's a form of information, it's a vibration, right? But then there is also natural world which vibrates its own things. So I'm talking about, let's say, a natural matter that is transformed into a man-made matter, right? So let's say a wood has been transformed into a table. So a table is a man-made reality. A wood is a part of a natural world. So a wood has a vibration of just it's a conscious vibration there of a tree. So and the tree appears as a tree because there is some kind of a collective archetypal information within the collective consciousness that this will be a tree. But what comes to man-made reality, it's all a creation of human beings and the human consciousness. So there is a transmission. Every object has a certain transmission. What is this transmission? It's a vibration. And this vibration carries information. So certain objects carry negative or positive or mixed information. So, and it doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is that everything transmits something, either the energy of the creation or some kind of limited creators. Let's say an animal created a hole, and it's the animal's dwelling now, like a den. So this den is, so the animal has been using its consciousness, creating that. So that den will vibrate that animal's, the information about that animal. Animals also use a lot of senses to decipher information. So they use their own senses, whatever the senses they have, and the strongest senses to read information about each other. So there is a different form of exchange of information there. But in general, consciousness is like, let's say, there is an intelligence or awareness, I don't know, something which is not manifest, but it is also in a manifested. So it's kind of difficult to separate it. but it sustains itself through different forms of vibrations. And it looks like it's such a multitude of things, but they all support each other, and they're all like kind of within one flow. But if you just take one limited aspect of it, maybe you will not understand what the whole picture of the existence is. But still, even through every single aspect of this reality, we can track this existence back to its origins, you know? So it means that we can track the essence back. So even if you now look at something only externally, you see, okay, this is a table, this is an animal, you can still go back and perceive the essence of that which you are observing. And this is called meditation on something. So if you want to observe the essence of anything or perceive subtler information in the form of waves, you have to be still and just concentrate on something and perceive subtler information of that. But that is useless, because if you go to the depth, you will just perceive nothing, because you will just go back to your own essence, and you will see that whatever I am perceiving within myself, or whatever I am receiving about that object or phenomena, it's all just, even I perceive the transitory waves of that phenomena or some information, how it came to exist, still at the end I go back to the same, which is nothingness, which is not of the worldly. Nothingness in this case means it's not of the worldly, because nothing, it's nothing to the world. It cannot be put into the concepts or into the context of the world at all. So this is very important to understand, because without this understanding, we're just dwelling in our own illusions and delusions of this world. Whether we call it, okay, I'm doing now spiritual act or practices, or I'm now doing something else with the purpose of this or that. This is all a human context. True spirituality cannot be understood within a human context, within a limited world perception or anything which is of a transitory nature. So you have to go bypassing that, absorbing through that into the ultimate, so that you can understand the essence. And the essence is empty. It's nothing. And because you realize that, true renunciation comes, because your mind attaches and links to things outwards less and less and less and less. And it cultivates own being beyond all these constraints of the world or conceptual ideas of existence and bodily needs and so on.